Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here with Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about how muscle mass improves lifespan and quality of life. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click a like down below and drop me a comment, I would appreciate it so much. Again, something that doesn't get talked about enough, and there's a little bit of nuance here and complexity because some extreme longevity experts will point out, well, ultra high protein intakes are not always linked to extreme longevity. But I think what they're failing to understand is you're talking about an extreme demographic. Like when they're saying that, they're talking about people who have the genes and the disease resistance and the luck to live to be over 100, right? Whereas when we're talking in terms of all-cause mortality and say quality of life up into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, muscle mass is massive. Okay, and we need to be clear on that. And this is what creates confusion, because when longevity experts are talking about longevity, they're not talking about you living to be 80 and being in great health at 80 and being completely mobile and active and not having a lot of problems at 70 and 80. They're talking about literally the ability to live to be over 100. And yeah, there's some evidence that mitigating protein intake, not being vegan, not eating no protein or anything, but just lower protein intakes are linked to extreme longevity. So we have to understand that difference. But when we start looking at muscle mass and all these other things, the things that kill us and hurt us and destroy our quality of life, muscle mass is extremely protective. Okay. And I mean, we're talking cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, cancers, diabetes, and then all these things that are related to bone fractures, osteoporosis, broken hips, all these things, right? These things are all countered. So we have to understand that difference, all right? Those are slightly different topics, and you would think they would be the same, and there's a huge degree of overlap. We need to be clear there. People who are having heart attacks and cancer aren't making it to 100. So that is a point to consider. So again, something you have to think about. Look, if you get cancer 3 times and go through 3 sets of chemo for it, you don't make it to 105. You just don't. If you start having heart attacks, you don't make it to 100 anyways. So what we're talking about are these other factors. And the cardiovascular one's a big deal. And we know that muscle mass is protective against heart disease. We know it's protective against various cardiovascular disease, just due to the metabolic benefits, the lowering of blood pressure, all these other things. And it's actually been found that weight training is the best exercise we can do for our heart if we only do one exercise. Now, when I say that, people will jump up and say, are you against cardio? No, I do lots of cardio. I literally run 3 to 4 days a week. I push a sled after I lift. Like, I'm very pro cardio. But if we go off with the current data shows, it shows that if you did only one exercise type, strength training has the best impact on cardiovascular health by a very small margin over cardio. Doing both is even better. Okay, that's what the evidence shows. They have slightly independent benefits. So really your best thing is to not do just one type of exercise, is to do more than one. But so again, understand that though. There is definitely a cardioprotective benefit. And people say, what about this lifter or these? Well, that's because of carrying way too much body weight from using too many steroids, the side effects of steroids, PEDs, and then other drugs, which are often used by many PED users. Recreational drug use has not been historically uncommon among certain athletes, bodybuilders, pro wrestlers. Those are factors. Okay, so you have to understand it's not the muscle mass that's the problem. It's the other things around the muscle mass that people are using to build the muscle that turns into the problem. Okay. And even then, that's relatively minor unless they're using significant amounts. That's a whole separate topic though. Muscle mass itself is protective there. The same thing when it comes to cancers and diabetes through the same pathways. The diabetes, it's been noted, muscle mass, every unit of muscle you have is a higher degree of protection against both cancers and diabetes. Well, the diabetes is really obvious. Better glucose disposal. better insulin sensitivity. Muscle mass is extremely insulin sensitive. Trained muscle is even more insulin sensitive. Well, if you're lifting weights and gaining lots of muscle, all your muscle is trained. But every pound of muscle that you put on your body slightly reduces your risk of all these things. Why? Because muscle itself is a glucose sink. It's an insulin sink. And so what you find is that the more muscle you have, the less insulin your body has to produce. Well, the less insulin it has to produce reduces the load on the pancreas, reduces all the load on the body. It's much harder to develop diabetes, and it scales to the amount you have. Okay, makes sense? It scales. So an extra 10 pounds of muscle over the last 10 pounds you gain is going to create a larger buffer. All right? Well, what about cancer? What's the primary fuel for cancers? Now, they can burn ketones too. This has been found. Unfortunately, for the low-carb people, it's turned out a lot of cancers burn ketones effectively also. But just like the other cells of your body and muscle cells, they prefer glucose. Okay? Cancer cells are very insulin sensitive. So people say, so where's the protection? Well, they need it for fuel. And if cancers get starved, they struggle to grow. It makes it easier for your body to fight a tumor if it's getting less food. Muscle tissue competes with it. Okay? If you got a lot of muscle tissue, we're back over to your body needs to produce less insulin to shuttle the glucose you have into the muscle tissue. It makes it all easier. Less circulating insulin, better glucose disposal, better glucose control. Your muscles can compete. They make it harder for your tumors to get fuel because they're fighting with it for resources. And then your body is able to deal with them faster. People don't realize that. We all get cancers and tumors. It happens. Your body generally gets rid of these small little clusters of cells before they become a problem, if you're lucky. See what I'm saying? And so then if early on they're competing with muscle tissue for resources, it makes your body getting rid of them easier. So people who have a lot of muscle, they just get cancer at lower rates. What about if they get cancer? People who lift weights and who have muscle have a higher survival rate against cancers if they do get it. So it's a win-win. It's like a less chance of getting it, and if you do get unlucky, improves your odds of survival. Strong people are harder to kill. Okay? Brings us to that next topic. Less likely to be hurt in a conflict, less likely to die in a conflict, less likely to die in a car wreck. If you have more muscle, better bone density, all these things. It's a big factor. It's a big deal. But what about bones? Well, bone density. Lifting weights, particularly heavy weights, being strong. Lifting heavy enough to gain a lot of muscle is going to be a lot of weight on the bar. Improves bone density. Reduces bone damage risk. Like it's harder to break your bones if they have a higher density. And it matters. It's a significant difference. It's not just, oh, your bones are 3% stronger. No, it's much, 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 much stronger. Okay, so that matters for breaking bones and accidents and injuries early on, but what about later in life? Osteoporosis, it staves it off. What do we know about those hip fractures? Hip fractures are deadly. You don't survive hip fractures in old age. People forget that. They're like, oh, I've fallen and I can't get up. Or they broke their hip. It's almost a death sentence. Your survival rate is absurdly low after that. You're almost guaranteed, with some exceptions, odds are not in your favor. You're dead within a few years, usually. That's how it works because everything degenerates and deteriorates. Well, lifting weights and particularly big movements that put a lot of muscle on you and being strong enough to gain a lot of muscle, better bone density, it staves these things off. You're just less likely to have these problems, and you're also going to have kept bone density from being younger. You're still going to be able to keep training as you get older. You're going to be less likely to have these problems. You're also less likely to need a walker or a cane or to have that hunched back you see old people have. That's all caused from bone loss. Sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle, and bone loss is what causes all those problems. So having muscle is protective against these things. And not just the muscle, but the processes that we use to gain the muscle improves things like bone density and tendons and other stuff. So again, we stave off these life-destroying and life-ravaging diseases and improves quality of life. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.